1 billion impressions in a single year. That's how many viewers People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA's social media, reached in 2023. Behind that number is a team working to cut through something their opponents spend billions to protect: the carefully crafted illusion that exploiting animals for profit can ever be humane. Ashley Fronert is the director of social media at PETA. She grew up on a farm, and her lived experience taught her that animals are individuals. There is often a disconnect between what we're taught about animals and what we feel in our hearts. Ashley's work focuses on exposing the often hidden truths about animals and how they are treated. This is Puppies, Pandemics, and Public Health. Let's join the conversation between Dr. Lieberman and Ashley about how billion-dollar industries hide cruelty in plain sight.
Welcome to another episode of Puppies, Pandemics, and Public Health. I am Dr. Johnny Lieberman. And today on the show, I am very pleased to welcome Ashley Fronert from People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA. Ashley, thank you so much for taking some time out to join the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Johnny. I'm really excited to talk more and get to, explore different things with you.
Ashley, you and I chatted a bit before, and you told me a bit about your amazing experience and your story and your background, how you're so committed to this work. If you could share maybe what is the most important message you'd like to make sure that our listeners get from everything we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I think I would say the industries that use animals as a business model are spending billions to make the average person feel good about hurting animals, which is something that they know in their heart is wrong. And so I really want to encourage people to question everything they buy or encounter and really understand where they think it's coming from. Just as a little example, wool. PETA and PETA entities have investigated over 100 wool farms and whether they're so-called responsible, ethical, humane, or some other humane-washed word. And we found cruel treatment and abuse on every single one. So I just want people to really question this and just think to themselves, it's always cruel when an animal is involved in some way.
That's such a great summary and great starting point, Ashley. Before I delve into some of the issues you just brought up, can you share what it is in particular you do, what your expertise is in, and how you got to where you are and how you're so passionate about this?
Yeah, so my expertise is social media. I'm in just the general sense, helping people understand what's happening to animals through culturally relevant content, whether that's exposing what happens to animals behind closed doors, or including memes and clever just content that gets people thinking. My background started in the tech industry, and I was just really moved more towards animal rights. I was actually in 4-H as a kid. I've always been a big animal person, and then I went vegan when I was, in my early 20s, and I decided pretty quickly after that that I wanted to make animal rights my full-time job, and I applied to PETA, and that was 12 years ago, and here we are now.
It's fascinating. There's so many pieces of that story, which I think can be teaching points for people going forward. It's one of the common themes and what you mentioned before and what you just told, and then a very concise summary of your story is a story of change.
Mhm.
And that is something that I've experienced it personally. Change is very hard. And when you're brought up a certain way, you believe a certain thing is right, it's very difficult for most people to take in new information that challenges that belief that people have associated with their identity a lot of the time. And that's really hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely experienced that also with my own family. I was born on a farm, actually, and that's kind of like where my love for animals did come from because my dad is very familiar with animals, and was always encouraging me to, go out and pet dogs and even bees when I was really young. He was like, no, honeybees are nice. Let's pet them. And so eventually, like I said, I did join 4-H, and that was for rabbits. I was big into rabbits.
For the listeners who don't know, what's 4-H?
Great point. That is basically an organization that encourages children to farm animals as well as other things, but primarily, unfortunately, teaching children that animals are products, which they absolutely are not. They are individuals. And something that, I did see quite often was people who were then more or less forced to have their friends killed for food or used for wool or have their babies taken for milk, depending on what species they were. I saw a lot of tears, and a lot of people who were really upset. I was never somebody who had my animals sold and turned into food, but I did see a lot of my friends from 4-H go through this, and it's such an emotional experience, and it's something that no child should ever have to go through because they know in their heart that these are friends, not food. And just seeing some people who, again, were in my bunny club crying because they didn't realize, in some cases even, that that's what was going to happen to these rabbits that they had. And so to me, that probably was one of the reasons that I started to understand how burgers were made or where milk came from, where chicken came from, aka chickens. And I started to just become a little bit more aware. And I was so young at the time, but once I was then able to read more in-depth stories about what happens to animals on farms, I really quickly was able to make that change. And I do think, to your point, like other people in my life were uncomfortable with it. What do you mean? They didn't understand what I was going to eat. They didn't understand why I would make this change when I had spent my whole life not not being vegetarian or vegan. But it's something that I think that everybody should consider. Once you learn more information, that's how we all grow. That's how we evolve. That's how we change. And it's something that's so important to every human's experience, but it's also something that, to your point, is uncomfortable, and we also need to work through and try to understand, like, okay, so if I did want to change, how would I do it?
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. That's you challenged or thought outside the box, it seems, at a young age. Because I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the intent of the 4-H program is to create animal advocates. But it sounds like you started questioning things. There was an emotional toll. You were making this connection. You saw other people having the same emotions brought up. Kudos to you, but I mean, you're way ahead of me in terms of challenging beliefs. And I mean, as a bigger principle, where would we be today in society if we didn't challenge long-held
Mm,
beliefs, right? I
mhm,
mean,
mhm,
going outside of the animal realm, it's everywhere. If you don't question long-held beliefs, you don't advance as a person, as a community, as a society. And so getting people to think differently about it, I think that's in part,
mhm,
large part of what you do, motivate and
mhm.
what you're really good at. So just wanted to draw that bigger picture. And now, after that detour, if you'd like to go back to your family farm and petting the bees and moving on.
Yeah, so, I really quickly, I mean, I was like 1 when I was born, and then my parents did move. My aunt lives there now, but so yeah, that's my history. And then, I went to college for marketing at undergrad, graduated, started in tech, and then yeah, like I said, I moved to PETA when I was about 24 or so, early 20s, out in LA, and I was really excited to just help people understand more about animals. I do think that, like I said at the start of this, there's such industries with such a large amount of money trying to silence animal activists, trying to hide the truth between behind all of the products that they are selling. Almost everyone in 2026 is paying attention to some form of media. It might be social, it might be podcasts like right now, email, legacy press, advertising. And at PETA, what I really like is that we meet people where they already are. So we use everything to try to reach as many people as we can in the way that makes sense for them, like using the language that they use, using the design that they like, explaining things in ways that make sense to them. So again, it might be something like your wonderful audience here who's listening to this conversation, and we might be on another podcast listening to somebody else who speaks to that audience. But what's so nice is like you can also like send a targeted ad to somebody whenever they're near a problematic institution like SeaWorld and say, hey, don't go there. And this is why over 40 orcas have died on their watch. So please don't go through those doors there. Or somebody might be reading about our powerful demonstration against Paul Smith because they're using mohair, which is stolen from goats in a very awful and abusive way. They literally are screaming out, crying, begging people to stop punching them. I really appreciate that we're able to kind of hit all these different points and help people try to understand, the ways that they encounter animals in their everyday life. For instance, going to a grocery store and seeing many dead bodies, we're helping people understand who those bodies are from. I so appreciate working with creators and influencers and podcasters such as yourself, because what's so wonderful is that everyone has a different niche that they're focused on. Like some people are focused on fashion and beauty, some people are doing comedy videos, some folks are doing just different restaurant tours. And what's so great is that everybody has this audience who they've built and who is so excited to see everything that they do. And they're so interested to learn more about this person's life and their lifestyle. And we're able to partner with them because they're lovely, kind-hearted people. And we're able to reach that audience who's very dedicated and really trust these people, as they should, because they've really earned it. And we're able to partner on something that's mission-based for animals. And people are making changes to what we were talking about earlier based on this person's experience with some sort of partnership that they've done with us.
Yeah. Those who are exploiting animals for profit in pretty much every sector of our society, their pockets are deep. And this is a way to combat that in
Mhm.
part. And I'm well aware that there has been progress made and there have been wins and there continue to be. Doesn't seem to happen fast enough for me and probably for the animals that
Yeah.
continue to suffer for profits in 2026. There's so many other options that don't involve
Yes.
animal cruelty. What do you see as the next step? Leverage the media to reach more people to change their mind. As you know, without public support and public buy-in to, for example, animals used for food or animals in research, whatever it be, it's very hard to make change. And that's, as I see it, a big role that well done social media has to play.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so what do you see as next or what's coming to try and keep the ball rolling?
Yeah. As activists, sometimes we can be, thinking about the animals we aren't able to save, but there's so many who we have saved and we will continue to save. And there's victories, some recent ones that I think also were very popular in the media and is helping continuing to grow the movement and help people again, understand what's happening to animals and make better choices for them is just all of the different fur that's being banned, not just at companies, which we've been seeing for years. We started with Calvin Klein and now it's snowballed into so many stores. Saks has banned it. Almost every store at the mall, honestly, Macy's, Nordstrom. But also the Emmys red carpet has banned it. Different fashion weeks are banning it. We're hoping that the others continue, but New York Fashion Week banning it is absolutely huge. And so when we're able to tell those stories on social media and in earned media, like obviously huge legacy outlets are also covering this as well. That helps people, again, understand the story and sometimes the animals behind it too. I mean, going to your point about dog breeding, something that I'm just loving about TikTok right now as somebody who's pretty chronically online is all of the just beautiful like rescue stories that we're seeing. We're seeing people foster dogs who they may have found abandoned on the street. We're seeing dogs who've never been pet potentially loving a new family. So that type of storytelling. And again, of course, there's like something happy at the end too, like when they are playing with the ball for the first time or something like that. And seeing that type of storytelling for dogs who are in need of homes, as well as, we would like to show it after a PETA investigation into the goat cheese industry. We were able to partner with some organizations and get some of those goats out of that facility and into some sanctuaries. And we're able to show one of the goats actually had a litter. And this is like the first litter who she's able to raise herself. And these babies aren't taken so that humans can use the milk for themselves instead of the babies. So, like, storytelling, I think, through social media is going to continue to grow, and folks are going to continue to be invested in these animals who really capture their hearts and help them make better changes. Like, folks who might be seeing this goat cheese investigation aren't going to buy goat cheese again. They're going to turn to delicious cashew cheese or the plant based options that places like Whole Foods and other grocery stores offer. So, that's kind of where
Yeah.
I see
Oh,
it moving in the future.
that's really, really exciting, highlighting some of the wins like that and the way you leverage that. You don't have to look very far to find humorous shorts and humorous bits out there
Hmm. Hmm.
highlighting the fact that humans aren't even supposed to drink goat milk, right? And there's so many ways it's being made fun of, as you pointed out in
Hmm.
our mostly serious discussion here. It's not meant for humans, and there's numerous ways to poke fun at that, which I've seen and I've laughed at, and
Hmm.
would say this
Hmm.
needs to get out to a wider audience, which I know is what you're doing.
Exactly.
And I know that, you know that, but so many people don't even, including myself as of, 5 or 6 years ago, not
Yeah.
making the connection. It's a product. It's not even designed for humans to be consuming.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
there's profound cruelty in the process aside from that.
Absolutely. I know. And I don't think that people do think about that because it's just so normalized. Just
No,
going
I
back to
didn't.
the broader conversation of change, this is something that essentially most people have done for most of their life in this country. And so that's something also we're taking to the streets. We have this demo that I find to be hilarious. Well, we have a couple different ones, but I'll start with one where we have a cow and somebody's sitting there, drinking from the udder. And just that
Yes, that's
visual
one of the ones
alone,
I've seen.
yeah.
Yep. Love it.
Just that visual alone helps people understand, wait, this isn't supposed to be happening. I would never try to run up to a cow and drink from them that way, let alone a wild cow, which is, before domestication as they were supposed to be. And another thing is, like, we've also done something really fun that I so enjoy, and I want us to do more of this, and I think we're going to, is taking it to the streets again, but offering people dog milk or dog cheese. And we don't say it's from a dog. And of course it's not, it's vegan. It's a prank, but, we have folks giving, hey, would you like a free cheese sample? People are saying yes. And then we say, oh, it's from a free range dog. And people are spitting it out. They're saying, what do you mean a dog? Did you mean it's for dogs? Nobody can understand that they're eating a dog's cheese. And we're like, well, why? What do you mean? Haven't you had a cow's cheese? Haven't you had a goat's cheese or a sheep's cheese? Then the connection and the cognitive dissonance starts to approach, and you're like, wait a minute, yes. And so we're hoping, that they go home and think about that and think about, oh, this isn't normal. I shouldn't be eating another animal's cheese or milk. Let me try the plant-based option. And we, of course, give them a plant-based option too.
I've seen both of those and I love them, but I love that trying to make it humorous. As I'm sure you know, that adds a lot to making people consume it more and share it more. And it's like,
Exactly.
that's interesting, and make them think about it more. I think
Hmm.
as you know, you can't force anyone to change. It just takes a while to come to the decision you need to make on your own. And this is one way of getting people there maybe more quickly. Dairy was kind of the last thing to go for me. And my thought process was, oh, their lives aren't as bad as cows that are slaughtered for food.
Hmm.
That was my belief, which I held for the longest time. And seeing little bits like this, and then there's another one. I don't know if it was PETA or not, where there's a mama cow chasing her baby as it's taken away on a truck, and there's no horrible imagery with that, but they mama cows miss their babies probably the
Absolutely.
same as human mamas do if they get taken away against their will.
Yeah, and they've been documented just crying out, and to your point, chasing the babies. I mean, I'm not a mother, but I could not imagine as a mother what that feels like. You're bonding with this animal who you've been carrying in yourself for a long time, and you have a bond, and all of a sudden this person who you thought you could trust comes and takes them. And then you're just left with what just happened. My baby was stolen, this baby that I was so excited about and excited to raise and excited to love. I just truly can't imagine it happens over and over to these cows, and then their babies are either doomed to live in the same life if they're a female, or if they're a male, they're often killed for veal as very young babies and not able to really move a lot because they want the meat to be tender. I find it horrible. And yeah, I also was vegetarian for a little bit before going vegan, and what changed me to being vegan was actually the male chicks. I was not aware that they were ground up alive if they're males after just a day of being born. And to your point, I kind of thought, oh, like eggs maybe aren't so bad because chickens raised for meat are slit in the throat, they're hung up, and their bodies are chopped up for nuggets. I didn't think that eggs were going to be as bad because I had the idyllic situation in my head, which is absolutely not the case. They're either kept in tiny cages or they're kept in like a large shed with no access to sunlight. And either way, it's awful. And of course, the male chicks, again, are ground up alive, which I was like so heartbroken by. Again, being in 4-H, I had met a lot of teeny tiny chicks, and I just found them to be the sweetest little tiny animal that could ever exist. It almost brings tears to my eyes thinking about how lovely these animals are, and to know that they're just like sorted and killed immediately is horrific. And yeah, so that visual really sticks with me, and I want to share it with other people. I think one of the most important parts of my job really is painting that picture for people, whether it's telling the story or showing the visual. We're really competing for like 1 second of people's attention. And if we don't show this reality quickly and clearly, they won't understand and they won't act, which could be signing an action alert, asking a certain company to stop serving eggs. But it also, again, needs to be in the right space for that person and really trying to move them to change. Something that we did just last week that I was really excited about was just using powerful language on X. X is formerly Twitter, for those who maybe don't know, and it's a space where you're just really quickly saying something. And we said every steak had a heartbeat. And this reached 2.4 million people, like very quickly. When people are sitting down at Applebee's to order dinner, they're probably not thinking about the animals behind that menu. So we're trying to bring the cows into the conversation. If they knew cows, like some of the ones that I've personally met at sanctuaries, there's a sanctuary called Kindred Spirits out in Los Angeles area. And they have a cow named Tofu and a cow named Vegan, and they're both so sweet. They just lick your hands, and they want to cuddle, and they love each other, and they love to eat alfalfa. And that sentence, "Every steak had a heartbeat," does bring them back to hopefully brings people back to the living, breathing individual that they wouldn't want to eat if they met. Cows have best friends, they love their families. And for steak, they're just kept in horrid farms, denied sunlight, care, love. They're separated from their families, like we've talked about, and ultimately they're killed in horrific ways. A story that recently came across our computers is whistleblower footage from a quote unquote small family butcher. And this showed a teenager urinating on a cow who he was about to kill. These cows are never treated with dignity. And of course, they don't want to die. They certainly don't deserve to, just because they're cows and they were born that species. They deserve so much better. And treatment like this is stuff that we see on farms over and over again, whether it's a small family farm or it's like a bigger establishment. And, just trying to expose that to people. I hope that no matter the different ways that we're trying to help them understand the issue, that they're really considering animals as individuals.
That's all powerful, Ashley. And making some kind of emotional connection between us as humans and the animals is very, it can be very powerful. As you know, I just recently watched one that you had created. It
Mm,
was, I think it was in California, on a topic which we haven't talked about, but it's another one. Dogs is what brought me into this fight
yeah.
in the first place, and it took me a while to get to the what you and I and many accept as adopt, don't shop. But you had a, I don't know, 2 minute or so video with Amanda, yes, Amanda McCants on a,
She's the best.
I think she cried during it. You sat
Hmm.
down, and it was these animals. I don't know. One thing stuck out with me because I volunteered in shelters, and
Hmm.
there's something like that. They're barking, saying, "I don't belong here."
Hmm.
And I don't know. Maybe you know ahead of time what's going to touch people. Maybe that didn't touch other people, but I really I felt that. I don't belong here.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
animals, they're dogs who probably had a life before in a human home, and maybe some of them didn't. They were always street dogs, but I don't belong here. And
Mhm.
it just stuck with me. There's these animals that don't want to be in this situation. The dogs in particular have been bred to be human companions.
Mhm.
And even though they get cared for well in these shelters,
Absolutely.
they get bypassed so often, and myself included, when I was looking, that never crossed my mind. That almost all of them are jumping up like this. Their
Mhm.
paws up on the as any human walks by. Give me
Mhm.
attention, give me love. I
Mhm.
don't belong here. Just that
Yeah.
short one resonated with me, and I hope that that gets out and convinces people who don't know that there's more than enough dogs and shelters to go
Mhm.
around and make great
Mhm.
companions and contribute to or help these shelters solve many of the problems they're dealing with understaffing, underfunding, too many animals to care for. And yeah, so I just if I haven't seen a lot of what you've done, but man, that was just amazing. That touched me, and I hope that that gets outreach to people who don't know about Adopt Don't Shop, and that there's already more than enough homeless dogs to go around and make great companions.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for the kind words. That is, a bit video that's being seen quite a lot. It has a couple 100,000 views, and so we're really excited about that. Amanda is the best partner. She was so wonderful and just so open to being vulnerable. While there's also another video that she did at the shelter that day where she's picking her match, and she's meeting a couple different types of dogs and kind of going over what is the best lifestyle for that dog and kind of deciding who would be like the best match for her and if she would be a match for them. And they're kind of like, hey, you don't have a yard that's big enough for me. So that was a really fun aspect of that too. We had like the two different styles on that one where we're able to be emotional in two different ways. One sad and like one of the more comedic because she is such a hilarious, amazing creator. Um, and yeah, that day was a little tough. We were both very sad to see all of these homeless animals, just knowing that people, yeah, are not able to understand yet, depending on who they are, that there are so many homeless animals in shelters and just waiting for that perfect person to adopt them. There's animals of all kinds. We saw a lot of litters, which was making me personally sad because spay and neuter is such an easy way to help reduce the overpopulation crisis. If everybody listening could just spay or neuter their dog or cat, that alone makes a huge, huge difference. I talked in that video about my dog. She had a litter when she was about one. So she was like a baby herself and she had 10 puppies. If each of those 10 puppies went on to have 10 puppies, we would have 100 homeless dogs just from my dog alone. And that's just, again, one dog, but you think about every shelter has dozens of dogs, maybe more, unfortunately. Folks really do need to make sure if they are ready to bring an animal into their life, they need to check the shelter first. I know sometimes people aren't ready for a puppy because they are so much work. So, you can find a dog who's one, you can find a dog who's five, and they still require a lot of care, of course, but they are a little bit less immediate than a little baby. And also, you really get to know their personality. I know sometimes when people are deciding that oh, I just want a golden doodle, and people will basically just order one online. You don't even
Ugh,
know. I know, let
no.
alone, let
Don't
alone
do
that.
that if you're listening.
Please, never, never. There's an ethical problem, of course, because it's not responsible to bring more animals into a world that already has too many. But also, you don't know anything about that particular dog. Whereas when you're going to the shelter and the shelter really understands, they've had these dogs and they know what they're looking for. They know the best person for them. So that's another reason to adopt is there's just so many animals in need, and you have these people who dedicate their lives to making sure that they get adopted and find a home that really works best for them.
Consistent with what you and I are trying to do
Mhm.
before bringing a new dog into your family. Think about it and do your research and look into it. As Ashley mentioned, things like age, temperament, exercise needs, how much activity you do and you're willing to do with your dog. You can
Mhm.
find out a lot about that from the shelter that's housing these
Mhm.
dogs, and all things like that in terms of what the dog's needs are going to be and how that's going to fit with your lifestyle. are so much more important than I want a golden retriever or I want a
Exactly.
German shepherd. And I can speak to that personally
Mhm.
because I was like that. I mean, I
Mm.
will always love golden retrievers. Like I'll just love all dogs, but choosing a dog based on a breed,
Mhm.
it's not, you're not doing the dog a favor. You're not doing yourself a favor. So, and trying to equate certain characteristics with a particular breed, that's kind of a myth. It
Mhm.
may be true, it may be not. I know this from experience. You can find a calm, adorable, loving, forgiving golden retriever just as you could find an angry one that's looking for a fight. It's based in large part on what their past experience was.
Yeah, and we see a lot of people who are not prepared for what the breed really is. We see people buy animals based on a trend, and they don't
Yes.
understand how much work and time and understanding goes to those dogs. Like you mentioned, German Shepherds, those are one of the, especially in the LA area, those dogs are one of the most in the shelter. Like every other cage, honestly, is a German Shepherd. Huskies is another one. We definitely saw people buying that again based on a trend from Game of Thrones, and then folks were not able to fulfill the needs of the dog, which those dogs are very high energy. They require a lot of walks, a lot of care, a lot of time. And for, a busy person, that's just not something that they're able to give them. Then so they turn them into the shelter when they're one. And there's so many dogs, especially large breed dogs, who are in the shelter at age one because just folks don't understand. I think even me personally, like I grew up with a family dog and she was so wonderful. She was like a cattle dog shepherd mix. And I was so used to her that when I adopted my next dog, I was like, she was just a very specific dog. And a lot of dogs are, just to require a little bit more from me. And that's fine. And I was able to do that because, I loved this dog. I want to make sure that they're getting the best life. But every dog is different. And even if you're buying a dog based on a quote unquote breed, you just don't know who you're getting. And you really need to be prepared to give them the time and care. And ultimately, you should be adopting a homeless dog anyways to help the dog population in general.
All great information, Ashley. I wanted to move back a little bit to also something else you said about celebrating successes and some of what I've seen PETA do, as well as other organizations in terms of building on success, like a company, for example, that says we're not going to sell any more fur products or we're not going to test cosmetics on animals anymore, is in the legal world, that's similar to something we call precedent.
Mm,
And you build on that. You've got a couple of big name companies, for example, that said, we're not selling any more fur. We're not testing cosmetics on animals. As you know, you can use that
mhm,
to take to another company and say, hey, these four of your competitors have,
mhm,
maybe you'd say they've listened to what the market wants and they've done this, or maybe not say it like that, but these are what your competitors are doing. Would you like
mhm,
to join them?
mhm,
And that seems like it might be a successful strategy moving forward. And I don't know if that translates to humans as well. Hey, four of your friends or four of your people in this group or 40 have said, that you're not going to buy leather clothing anymore or whatever it is,
mhm,
starting with
mhm,
something that doesn't have to be a massive disruptor in your life. What
mhm,
about you? You agree to do that? And having studied law, I've seen both approaches, which PETA and others do, is forcing someone to do it through a lawsuit or a law, whatever it is, or working with the corporation to say, let's listen to the market and let's do what's best for your bottom line and the animals. And I, yeah, I just wanted to say, for in my mind, what you said about that, I put it in the category of precedent. Maybe it doesn't fit exactly, and that's not
mhm,
new. I've
mhm,
seen going back to way before social media, there were print ads trying to highlight this. Certain companies are doing this a certain way, and social media I feel like it has the potential to reach so many more and potentially convince so many more people.
mhm, mhm. Absolutely. I mean, Like you said, it's a multi-prong approach, but whenever Starbucks, for instance, decided to finally listen to all of the folks asking them to stop charging so much more for the vegan milks that almost everybody is ordering, like they were saying, it's such a large percentage of every order. People are choosing the non-dairy plant-based milks, which are helping cows and helping the environment. Once they stopped charging for that, it was like a domino effect where Dunkin' did the same. I believe at that time Peet's Coffee as well, several different huge chains. And now there's only a handful who are still asking people to pay more. It really has become almost the industry standard for all milks across the board to not be extra. And in some cases, people are charging extra for dairy because it is so much more harmful for the environment and potentially having oat milk just come standard with the drinks. So we do see a lot of that, and it's absolutely wonderful. We also are always piling on when we do have a victory. We're trying to bring in other companies to see that victory and to understand it both on social, and also we always approach companies and let them know of things like this so that they're staying abreast of what's happening in their industry and what their competitors are doing so that they don't lose their customers to brands that are doing better for animals. So yeah, we're always, exploring new ways to get the ball rolling. Another example is PETA Asia did an investigation into the mohair industry, and over 300 companies decided to stop selling it right after that. So that was something where we were able to say, like, this list is happening. We have 300 companies. Are you on it, or are you going to be one of the very few people who are not? And that's a great time to bring more folks into the fold and say, like, okay, so you're saying that you're cruel and you're going to ignore this tiny baby goat screaming because somebody's holding them by the leg and trying to take their hair. And when you frame it like that, it's really hard to say no when everybody else is saying yes.
Powerful stories and great successes that you and all of us in the space have to build on.
Thank you.
Ashley, one last question before we start to wrap things up. What do you see as the biggest barrier, and maybe offer a solution for getting to the audience that you already have convinced? How do you continue to persuade more so that we get this critical mass where it just
Mhm.
keeps going on its own and it gets easier?
Yeah, I mean, what I do love about PETA is whenever I look at our insights on somewhere like Instagram, it's about 50-50. We're reaching 50% of people who don't follow us already.
Wow, you've got that metric. That's pretty incredible. At least from my perspective. That seems like a hard piece of data to get, but move on.
And that's like on a monthly basis. So sometimes we have, like I mentioned, the every steak had a heartbeat. That's probably significantly higher of people who don't already follow us. So what I do love is that we are reaching into the culture. Animal rights, it isn't a niche issue. It's something that does touch everything that people interact with, whether it's food, fashion, science, or culture. And again, that's why we have to be everywhere. So we've had to get creative and, find fun ways to explain these topics to folks. Something like we were talking about with the Amanda McCants collaboration. I think that's a wonderful example where it wasn't graphic, it was just a true conversation. And then we also had the comedic aspect. So we're able to, again, help highlight all of the homeless dogs who need attention and understanding from humans, but in a way that potentially doesn't upset people too much.
Thank you, Ashley. So I'll leave the floor to you here as we close on the final few minutes. What final message would you like to impart to our listeners? Where can they go to learn more and find out more on their own? How can they help?
Yeah, I mean, just to summarize our conversation, I think being open to change is something that I would really encourage people to have, even if you think you already know something or you think you've studied something, like dig a bit deeper, see some investigative footage. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X, Blue Sky, Threads. We're kind of everywhere. We're at official PETA on TikTok. And just, come visit our website, PETA.org, understand what's happening to animals in the ways that you might not be aware of, but you may be contributing to. And then this summer, please do not go to SeaWorld and do not go to the circus and do not swim with dolphins, because all of those industries do make their money on exploiting, breeding, and abusing animals.
It's behind the scenes and all of those. It looks like the animals are being well cared for and treated well, behind the scenes, they are not. Trust Ashley. Don't patronize those businesses.
Absolutely.
At
Thank
least
you so much.
at least while they're continuing to treat the animals that way.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's been great chatting with you. So much information you shared. It's impactful to me. I had a good time. I learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure our listeners will too.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Hope to be back. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. These conversations aren't always easy, but they matter, and they're worth having. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more information, videos, and updates at johnliebermanmd.com. Take what resonates, ask questions, and keep learning. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not medical or legal advice and does not replace speaking with a qualified professional. Always seek guidance specific to your situation.